So in the last video we got to the point where we were actually starting and creating the document for the letter, and I said we're not going to use any templates. I'm going to just use a blank document. So just click on that and that will create an A4 document, and as you can see it's currently in portrait mode, which means it's that way around. If you need to change the layout or size of your document, you can do that by going to layout, and then you've got the option here for size, orientation and so on. So if I wanted it to be landscape, I could just change that there and then change it to a landscape document. If I wanted it to be a different size, I could click on the size little down arrow there. I could maybe change it to A5 or a different size if I wanted to. Always go by what the question asks. Okay, so we've got this. I've actually got my rulers turned on. You probably won't have on yours. You can turn the rulers on and off by going to View and just putting ruler on there or off. Okay. I don't know if you can see, you've got two things here. One is the margin. I'm going to put my ruler on just to demonstrate this. See this dark grey area here? This is that shows where the left margin is. This shows where the right margin is. And on this side it shows where the header is. And then at the bottom it shows where the footer is. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is put my footer in. If I want to put a header or footer in, I just double click in the area I want to go. So if I wanted to add a header, I would just double click in there. If I want to add a footer, I can just double click in there. So if I just double click, see it comes up with this bit that says footer. I'll put my name in. Obviously in the exam I would put all three things in. And then once I've finished, I'll just double click on the document again. And if you scroll down, you can see now I've got a footer. This will appear on every page of the document. So we've got our page set up. Let's get the text in. So I've gone back to my text file here. I'm going to just select everything from here. Copy all of that. So I just selected it, right clicked and selected copy. I could also press Control and C together to do that. Or I could also have gone Edit, Select All, and then Edit, Copy. They're all the same. So I've now got that stored in my memory. I'm going to right click and paste that. And when I paste, I'm going to paste using this option, the clipboard with an A, which says keep text only. That stops it bringing any formatting over from another document. With a text file, it doesn't matter because there is no formatting in a text document. Okay, so we've got to get this on one A4 page. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my paragraph spacing, because sometimes it's set to have a blank line after each paragraph and things like that. So I'm just going to go into this little arrow there, click on that, and I'm going to change my paragraph spacing. So after each paragraph there's an 8-point space. I want to get rid of that. I'll change that to 0, and I'm going to change that to single. So these two options, after and line spacing single. Okay, and that stops things like addresses having a blank line in between each line of the address. There's still not enough space for my document. I have to make sure my text is at least 10. So if I put my cursor in my text, I can see on my home tab that it's 11, so that's fine. So I'm going to get rid of some of these spaces here between the paragraphs. So I'm just moving my insertion point or my cursor to that blank line. You can see it flashing. Press the delete key or the backspace key. And I'm just going to do that on each of those blank lines. Okay. Do that there as well. There you go. And that condenses it up quite a lot. Now we can fit it onto one page. That's quite happy. So remember at the beginning we looked at it, and one of the things it said in the question was we needed to put some information in. So we need to put today's date. I'm going to put today's date, which is 23rd of June. 23rd of June 2020. And I'm going to just scan through and look for anywhere else it's asking me to put some information. So it's asking the adult admission prices, and it asks me to enter the information I found in section A, task 1, which is the internet search. And I've got that in my responses file, so I'm going to just flick back to my responses file, and I can see it's £7. Copy that. I could just type in. When you put this in, make sure you put the pound sign in as well. So I'm going to just, because I've got this highlighted at the moment, if I paste or type, it will delete that and then put my new typing in. So I'm going to right click, and you can see I've got lots of options for pasting. I'm going to go back to my clipboard with an A to keep the text only. That means make sure I don't carry over the formatting from the other Word document. So okay, just double check. So we've got this blue line just gives us some tips on grammar and things. We're not worrying about that too much. So I'm going to start at the top of my document. I've got all the bits of information in I need. This Rothwell Ramblers, I'm assuming it's not part of an address. I'm assuming it's a tile. So I'm going to make it look like a tile. One of the rules you can use when you're doing these is 16 for main tiles. Okay, and I'm going to make that bold, italic, and underline. And then for subheadings, so we've got things like autumn walks, which is a subheading. You make that 14 and bold. Okay, those changes sizes may change depending on how tight the document is, but generally it's quite a good starting point. Okay, so that's 14 and that's 16. The rule for the title is it should be bigger than most of the other text on your page. That's basically the rule. You can have occasional bits of text that are bigger, but generally your title is going to be the biggest part. Okay, so I'm going to make that underlined as well. I think they're very close because this is capitals. This is actually looking as big as that. So I may make my title a bit bigger than the 16. So these things are not set in stone. They're not rules that have to always be obeyed, but they're good starting points and guides for how to set up your text. Okay, so I hope you're making all those. So let's work through here. What text have we got that's important enough to require some highlighting? So there's nothing about dates or times or anything. Okay, we've got one here with a date. I'm going to put that there. I'm going to just make that bold. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to highlight the adult admission price is £7. I'm going to make that red. No, actually, I'm going to make it bold. Make it black. And I'm going to make it underlined. Because I do want it to stand out. But the reason I didn't use red there is there's a line under here that says, would members please let me know by August the 20th, by 20th of August. Now that's a cut-off date, so it's really important that people read that because if they just read this and don't spot that, then they'll miss the cut-off date. So I'm going to say, please let me know by 20th of August. I'm not going to highlight the whole sentence because it's actually a paragraph. I don't want to do that. I'm going to make it red though, and I'm going to make it bold. And although I've only highlighted part of that sentence, what it does, it forces you to read that sentence because you see that in red highlight. You think, oh, please let me know by 20th of August. What do I need to let you know? And then you go back and read the sentence. So it's quite a good way of forcing people to read a sentence by doing a partial red highlight. Okay, and then we've got this last bit. Future walks will include Garsdale Head and Hurlga. Now, to me, this is a list of 3 things. So what I could do is I could actually go, you know what, I'm going to break that into 3 things. And sometimes you can do this with a table. There'll be another video showing you how to do tables, but sometimes you can do it with a table, and that works quite well, depending on the information you've got. But we've got these 3, so future walks will include that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make these bullet pointed. So I don't know if you saw what I did there. I pressed enter and deleted the comma after each of these because I knew I was going to turn it to bullet points. So I don't want any punctuation at the end there. So I've highlighted those. I can go to the top of my home tab here and change that to bullet points. I'm going to just use normal bullet points. If this were a set of instructions, for instance, it said for the next walk we're going to meet at Garsdale Head, and then we're going to go to Bolton Castle, and then finally we're going to go to Cam Head. We might have done 1, 2, and 3, but for just normal information we can do it like that. Okay, so we've broken that down. We're going to get potentially an extra point for using bullet points here where appropriate. We're going to pick up a mark for highlighting important information. We're going to get a mark for highlighting subheading, and we're going to get a mark for our title. So these are little things that will pick you up marks, so they're worth making sure you're doing. I think I'll probably lose some space there actually. Okay, so I just deleted a couple of blank lines there. So let's have a look back at our question. Always go back and check the question. It's always worth having a check. So it's on 1A4 page portrait. We're happy with that. So far it's fit for audience purpose. It's got the text from letter text L1. We've put the adult admission price in. We haven't put the logo in. So this is the next thing we're going to do. We're going to go back to our Word document and we're going to add a logo. So we've decided that's the logo. I've got choices here. I can just right click, copy, go back to my Word document and paste it. Now, generally you want your logo at the top of your page or right at the bottom, but as a rule of thumb, I would just put it at the top. So you need to put your cursor at the end of the text, paste that in. You only get one paste option for an image. And what that does is it puts it in, but it's what's called inline mode, which means it's actually behaving like text. So if I put, say for instance, I put a couple of spaces in here, you see it just moves the text along and moves the picture as well. If I press return and make a new line, it moves the picture onto a new line and so on. That's called inline. So while you're in inline mode, it's just behaving like it's a giant letter, effectively. It's not very helpful because it means we can't drag it over to where we want it to be over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the way that's interacting with the text by going to the layout options. And I'm going to use one of these either in front of or behind of the text. Selecting one of these allows me to just pick it up and move it around. So I can pick it up, move it around. I'm not going to go right to the corner of the page, and I'll show you why. I'm going to go to, say there, it's fine. Your logo doesn't need to be huge. I'm going to make the logo a bit smaller. If you look at most things with logos, they don't take up half the page. So, and the logo size is linked to your image size. If your logo is too big, it means you can't have, your images have always got to be bigger than your logo. So if you have a huge logo, you've got to have an even bigger picture. So I'm now looking at that. That's fine. That's sitting where I want it to do. It's not interfering with the text. I now want to put a picture in appropriately. So I've got Garsdale Head and Hellgill, Bolton Castle, Vaisgarth Falls, Camhead and Ingleborough. There's a bit about up a narrow rocky gorge, across open fields and down an even rockier and narrow gorge. So I've got a choice of those three pictures. I could probably put a castle down here. I could probably put the something to do with the fields up here, and there's a little gorge which is the water one. I'm going to go with the castle, I think. So I'm going to grab my castle image, copy that, and then just put it over here somewhere. I'm not too worried where, because it's going to come in line, which is ugly. But I'm going to change that to the final option we want to use, which is square. Now, if you change it to square, what happens is I'm going to just resize it. And when you're resizing, always use these corner handles. So I'm going to change it to square, and what I'm going to do is I can move that amongst the text, and the text just wraps around it. So that's quite a useful one. I want to put that there next to, somewhere next to that. Oh, well, that's actually quite good. I'll put it there. And then I'm going to put just go to the end line and press return so that I hope you enjoy the autumn walks comes in afterwards. It's really important when you're putting pictures in, they must be after dear and before the best wishes bit or kind regards or whatever. They must be in this part here, which is the body. It's called the body of the letter. So your picture should always be in there. Okay, so I've got a picture in there. It's actually interacting with the text and wrapping around, which potentially is going to give me another point. I'm going to quickly format that to add a border. In fact, I don't need to format that to add a border. I can just select it, and I've got this picture format option when I select an image. I'm going to go to picture border, select a border. So I've put a black border around it. I could also change the size or the heaviness of that line, so I can make it a heavier line there. So we're looking like we've got the letter in place, we've got a picture in place. One final thing I'm going to do is add a page border. So I'm going to go to design, and I'm going to go to page borders. It's really easy. I'm just going to select box. And that puts a page border on. Again, that's something that possibly could get you a point. It also gives you a good guide of where you can put your images because you don't want them outside of the page border. I might want to highlight these, just make these bold maybe. Phone and email. So I've just selected those and press Control B for bold. So there we are. We have a letter that's fit for purpose. One last thing we can do, if you've got a lot of text, you can do this, is if you select your text, you can go, instead of using left align, you can use justify. And what that does is it just tidies up the edges so they line up nicely on both sides. You don't have to do that, but that's possibly another thing you could do that would get you a point. So we've just got to save this now. So we'll save that as, and we're going to give it a name. We're going to call it Rothwell Ramblers Autumn Walks Letter. And that's that.